Okay, for this video, we are going to be looking at how ionization relates to the periodic table, or how the periodic table relates to ionization. So on the screen, you are seeing a periodic table, an example of a periodic table. And as you should know by now, most of the periodic table is made out of metals. Okay, only these atoms here in green are really non-metals. Now, if you remember clearly, is that we did speak about how the elements in certain groups have particular valencies. So let's take a closer look. Group 1 elements have a valency of 1. Group 2 elements have a valency of 2. Remember, we don't talk about the B groups. So in 3A, remember this is group 3. Group 3A has a valency of 3. This group has a valency of 4. This have a valency of 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, except for helium. Okay? So look at this. Now that tells us a lot. If you remember the rules, the octet rules of ionization, if the element has less than 4 electrons in its valence shell, then it will be losing electrons. So look at this. All elements in this group will have less than 4. This have less than 4. This have less than 4. So elements in groups 1, 2, and 3 will all lose electrons when they are ionizing. So these elements will become cations. So first thing we are noticing is that elements in group 1, 2, and 3 become cations. They become cations. Remember that means they are going to be positively charged ions. Because elements in these groups, they are going to lose electrons during ionization. Okay? So these elements will lose electrons during ionization. If you remember correctly, we said elements with a valency of 4 will neither lose nor gain. They do not ionize. So elements in this group do not ionize. Okay? So these elements will not ionize. They do not become ions. Okay? They do not become ions. Okay, ever. Those are the elements in group 4. All right? Now, the elements here, the elements in these three groups here, groups 5, 6, and 7, if you remember correctly, they have more than 4 electrons, but less than 8 electrons. So these atoms or elements will gain electrons during ionization. So elements, let me write this here. Elements in groups 5, 6, and 7 they become anions during ionization. That is, they're going to be negatively charged. Okay? They're going to be negatively charged, so they become anions, and they become ions because they are going to gain electrons during ionization. Okay, they're going to be gaining electrons. So let us look closely at it again. Notice that these elements, 1, 2, and 3, these elements here, especially this and these, all of these and all of these are metals. By the way, these two also lose electrons during ionization, but we don't talk much about them at grade 9. Later on, you can talk about them. So, as in a next way, we can say typically metals become cations. So, a next thing to note is that metals become cations. They become cations. Metals become cations, whereas non-metals become anions. Okay? Because non-metals are going to be negatively charged when they ionize, and metals will become positively charged when they ionize. Repeating, elements that are metals become positively charged when they ionize because they're going to be losing electrons, and so they become cations. The elements that are non-metals will become anions because they will be gaining electrons during the ionization process. So as you can see based on the diagram on the periodic table, these elements will all become anions, okay? And these elements here, over here, will become cations during the ionization process. Okay, so if you're given an element in a test or an exam or an assignment, the first thing you can do is to look and see what part of the periodic table is this element from. Is the element a metal or a non-metal? If it's a metal, assume instantly it is going to become a cation and it will be losing electrons. If it is a non-metal, assume it is going to gain electrons and become a negatively charged ion and become an anion, that is. And the number of electrons that the atom gains or loses depends on which group the atom is from or the element is from. So take a close look at that as well. Elements in group 1 will lose 1 electron. Elements in group 2 will lose 2 electrons. Elements in group 3 will lose 3 electrons because they have 3 electrons on the outermost shell. Elements in group 5 will gain 3 electrons because 5 plus 3 is 8. Okay, elements in group 6 will gain 2 electrons because 6 plus 2 is 8 as well. And elements in group 7, sorry, elements in group 7 will gain 1 electron because 7 plus 1 is 8. So that will give them a full outermost shell. Please remember that the group 8 elements, the noble gases, have full valence shells already. So they do not ionize because they don't need to gain or lose any electrons. So I hope this was helpful to all of you. See you in the next video.